Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be talking about something that I think a lot of parents grapple with. How to discipline children while making sure that we're respecting their dignity.
It's such an important topic.
Yeah, and we've got a really great book to guide us through this. Raising Royalty. It's filled with stories and wisdom from the Jewish tradition.
And what's really interesting about this book is that it takes these really old teachings and connects them to like the challenges that modern parents face.
Right. It's like ancient wisdom meets modern day parenting.
Yeah, exactly.
So the book starts with this parable about, well, you know how kids always ask why the moon is smaller than the sun?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Well, Raising Royalty brings up this parable from Rashi, this famous Jewish scholar.
Oh, I love Rashi.
Me too. So he explains that God actually created the sun and the moon the same size at first.
Okay.
But then the moon started complaining about having to share the sky.
Oh, like sibling rivalry.
Right. Sibling rivalry, but on like a cosmic level. So because of the moon's complaints, God made it smaller.
Interesting. So how does this parable connect to, like, parenting?
That's a great question. It's not immediately obvious, but when you think about it, the moon's complaint, even though it might have been kind of wrong, was still coming from a place of feeling.
Like insecurity.
Maybe insecurity or a need for its own space, you know? Like it wanted to stand out or something. And Raising Royalty points out that it's kind of similar with kids. Their misbehavior a lot of times comes from a place of unmet needs or like big feelings that they don't know how to handle.
Right. It's like we're so focused on the behavior itself that we forget to look at what's going on underneath.
Exactly. And so the point isn't necessarily just to punish the action, but to try to understand the feeling behind it.
So it's like, even when we discipline, we need to do it in a way that recognizes those feelings and doesn't like crush the kid's spirit.
Exactly. It's about preserving their sense of self-worth, even when they mess up. And speaking of that, the book talks about this concept called Isur D'Oraisa. It's basically this strong prohibition in Judaism against publicly shaming someone.
So that applies to kids too, right? It's not just for adults.
Oh, absolutely. It's a big deal. In fact, Raising Royalty specifically says that a teacher shouldn't reprimand a student in front of the entire class. They're really emphasizing that public shaming is a huge no-no, especially when it comes to kids. And I think that makes a lot of sense when you consider how sensitive kids are, you know?
Yeah. I mean, even as adults, we can remember those moments when we were embarrassed in front of others and how much that hurt.
Right. So imagine that, but for a child who's still developing their sense of self.
And whose sense of self is so dependent on what their peers think of them.
Exactly. It can be incredibly damaging to their self-esteem.
Yeah, it's like we're chipping away at their self-worth without even realizing it.
It's so true. And, there's a really great story in Raising Royalty that really brings this point home.
Oh, tell me.
Okay. It's about Rabbi Shalom Arush. He's a pretty well-known rabbi. And he tells this story about Rebbe Zalman of Liadi.
Okay.
So Rebbe Zalman was teaching, and one of his students answered a question incorrectly, right? But instead of embarrassing the student, Rebbe Zalman went above and beyond to guide him towards the right answer without making him feel like he had messed up.
So he was gentle with him.
Yeah, super gentle. Like he even pretended that he hadn't heard the student's answer correctly just to protect the student's ego.
Wow.
Right. It's a really powerful example of how even when a child is wrong, even when they make a mistake, we can correct them in a way that preserves their dignity.
It shows that the child's honor should come first. That respect is what allows them to learn and grow without feeling crushed.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like Raising Royalty is saying that this respect isn't just about those specific moments of correction. It's about creating a whole environment of safety and respect for kids.
Like, especially at home.
Right.
The book talks about how a child's home should be their sanctuary.
Their safe haven.
Exactly. A place where they feel free from judgment and tension.
So you're saying that if a home environment is stressful, it can actually hinder a child's emotional well-being and their ability to learn and grow.
Oh, yeah. Like, think about it. If you're constantly on edge, worried about being criticized or getting into trouble, it's hard to focus on anything else, right?
Right.
Kids need that feeling of safety and unconditional love in order to thrive.
It's so easy to forget that kids are like sponges. They soak up everything around them. The emotional temperature of the home really does have a huge impact.
Yeah, you're right. It's something we need to be mindful of.
And there's this really powerful story in the book that drives this point home.
Oh, what is it?
It's about a principal who years ago, he publicly embarrassed a student,
Okay.
and he still carries this guilt.
Wow.
And the student, whose name is Moshe, he forgave him. But it's like, even years later, this principal is haunted by what he did.
It shows how deeply those words and actions can affect children, even years down the line.
It really does. It's a reminder that those moments that might seem small to us, they can leave lasting scars.
So true.
And it really underscores the responsibility that we have, to choose our words and actions carefully.
Right. And it's not just what we say, it's what we do too.
Yeah.
Raising Royalty has this great anecdote about a student who felt incredibly inspired just by seeing Rav Levinton, this respected rabbi, engaged in learning.
Wait, just watching him learn, that's it.
Yeah. And when asked what about it was so inspiring, the student just said, I get tremendous chizuk.
Kazuk.
Yeah. Which means strength and encouragement from seeing you learn.
Wow, that's amazing.
It shows how powerful it is for kids to see adults modeling that respectful behavior and that love for learning.
So it's about actions speaking louder than words.
Exactly. Kids are always watching us, whether we realize it or not. Our actions have this, ripple effect.
It's a good thing to remember. So we've talked about avoiding public embarrassment, creating a safe home environment, and the power of leading by example. But how does all of this apply to the world beyond the home? How do we take these principles and apply them in broader contexts, like school or in the community? I think that's something a lot of parents are wondering about.
It's like expanding that circle of sanctuary that we were talking about. And it's something that Raising Royalty really stresses. But we'll dive into that more after the break.
So we've been talking about creating that safe and respectful environment for kids at home. But how do we carry that into the world beyond the home? How do we apply these ideas from Raising Royalty when they're at school or interacting with other kids, out in the community?
It's like you said before, expanding that circle of sanctuary. And it's something that Raising Royalty really focuses on. The book is saying that the same respect we give kids at home, it needs to extend to all parts of their lives.
That makes sense, but it also feels kind of daunting. How can we as individuals really make a difference in those big environments? It's not like we can single-handedly change a whole school culture, right?
You're right. It's a huge task to take on.
Uh-huh.
But Raising Royalty emphasizes something really important here. It's leading by example.
Okay.
It's not about lecturing kids on respect, but about actually embodying it ourselves, especially those tough situations where it's hard to do.
So it's like that saying, walk the walk, don't just talk the talk.
Yeah, exactly. If we're consistently showing respect to others, being kind even when it's hard, kids are going to see that. They're going to pick up on that.
Okay.
They learn by watching what respect actually looks and feels like in action.
That makes sense.
And what's amazing about that?
Yeah.
Those little acts of respect,
Yeah.
they can have a ripple effect.
Oh, interesting.
Your one act of respect might inspire someone else to do the same, so on. It might feel small, but over time, I think that's how we actually start to change a culture, one interaction at a time.
Yeah, that's encouraging. It makes it feel a little less overwhelming, we can all play a part.
Exactly.
So, Raising Royalty also talks about the importance of speaking up when we see a child being mistreated.
Yes.
But that can be tricky, right? We don't want to overstep boundaries, especially if it involves another family.
It definitely takes courage and sensitivity. Raising Royalty encourages us to really trust our gut. If something feels off, don't ignore it.
So even just offering a listening ear or a kind word to the child, that can make a difference.
Sometimes that's all it takes. Just knowing that someone cares can be huge for a child who's feeling alone or hurt. And by speaking up, even in a gentle way, we're setting an example for others around us. It's like saying, hey, this isn't okay. We treat kids with respect.
It's like drawing a line in the sand.
Yeah, exactly.
But, what if we're in a situation where a child is being disrespectful themselves? How do we address that while still, upholding their dignity? I'm curious what Raising Royalty has to say about that.
Yeah, that's a really important question. And this is where it gets interesting. The book talks about the importance of respecting a child's physical space, even when we're correcting them.
Oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that as being so crucial. But I guess, from a child's perspective, having their things touched or moved without permission, it could feel disrespectful, right?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that they have a sense of ownership, even over their toys or their belongings.
Right.
And by honoring that, we're also teaching them to respect the boundaries of others.
It's funny, sometimes I think we forget what it was like to be a kid.
Yeah.
It's easy to dismiss those things as oh, it's just a toy, but to them, it's a big deal.
And you know that lesson about respecting boundaries?
Yeah.
I think it's something we could all use a refresher on.
Oh, totally.
It applies to how we treat everyone, not just kids.
That's true. But going back to the book, is there anything in Raising Royalty about handling those moments when a child is being, like, openly defiant or rude?
Mm-hmm.
Because honestly, those are the times that I struggle with the most. Like, how to stay calm and respectful when our own buttons are being pushed.
That's a great question, and I think it's something so many parents grapple with. And, you know, Raising Royalty actually offers some really practical advice for those moments.
Okay, so we were talking about those really tough moments when a kid is, like, just being openly defiant or rude. What does Raising Royalty have to say about how we can handle those moments without resorting to anger or disrespect ourselves?
It's so easy to get caught up in that heat of the moment,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and just react impulsively,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we feel challenged by, you know, a child's behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But Raising Royalty reminds us that even in those moments, we still have a choice.
Right.
We can choose to respond with respect, you know, even when it's really hard.
But how do we actually do that? Because it's not always easy to stay calm and collected, especially when a kid's yelling, no, at the top of their lungs, you know?
Right, and the book gets that. It's not like it gives us some magical solution that will make defiance just like disappear.
Right.
But it does offer some, I think, really insightful guidance.
Okay.
One thing it really emphasizes is the importance of separating the child from their behavior.
What do you mean by that?
It means recognizing that even though their behavior might be unacceptable at that moment, they are still inherently worthy of respect. You know, it's like saying, I don't like what you're doing right now, but I still love and respect you as a person.
That's a really subtle but important distinction. It's about addressing the action without, like, attacking their character.
Exactly. And doing that, even when we're feeling frustrated or angry ourselves, the book suggests that sometimes the best thing we can do in those moments is just take a step back, take a deep breath, and really try to, like, calm ourselves down before responding.
That makes a lot of sense. Because if we're already feeling agitated, we're just going to react in a way that escalates the situation.
Right. And think about it. When we react with anger or harsh words, you know, what message are we really sending?
Yeah.
We're basically modeling that same behavior that we're trying to discourage.
Yeah, it's like we're saying it's okay to lash out when you're upset.
Exactly.
But if we can take that pause, you know, and respond with calmness and respect, even when it's tough, we're teaching them a different way.
Exactly. And it's not just about that one situation. It's about, like, the impact on their emotional development in the long run.
Oh, how so?
When kids are treated with respect consistently, you know, even when they make mistakes, it helps them develop that, like, really secure sense of self.
Huh?
They learn that they're loved and valued no matter what, which makes them more resilient and better able to handle challenges in the future.
So it's not just about creating, like, a peaceful home in that moment. It's about giving them tools to navigate life's ups and downs, you know, with confidence.
Exactly. It's about setting them up for success in their relationships and just in their overall well-being throughout their lives. You know, thinking back on everything we've talked about today from Raising Royalty, it's really a profound perspective on parenting. It's not just about, you know, discipline or rules. It's about fostering this deep sense of respect and dignity in every single interaction we have with a child.
It's about seeing them as, like, whole people, worthy of love and respect even when they make mistakes.
Exactly.
And it's also realizing that our actions, you know, even the small ones, can have a ripple effect that goes way beyond that moment.
Absolutely. And I think if there's one thing to take away from this whole deep dive, it's that treating children with respect isn't just a nice idea. It's essential for them to really thrive.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that we all have a part to play in creating a world where kids feel safe and valued and, you know, empowered to reach their full potential.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wrap up, we just encourage you to, like, reflect on your own interactions with children and ask yourself, is there even just one small change I can make to bring more respect and dignity into their lives?
Because those little changes, you know, multiplied over time can really make a huge difference.
That's the kind of world I want to live in. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.